Okay. Good evening.
You got a great video, huh?
It's good to be back. I'm glad that we could meet with all the weather events. I'm Robert Buxton. I mean, we all know each other, right? So, sounds good. I'd like to start with a silly improvisation. It's been tuned. Yeah, I noticed a nice tone there. So we've done things like this before. If you give me some silly tune, anything, like a melody that's not serious.
Mary had a little lamb.
What?
Mary had a little
Oh, Mary had a little bit, yeah. Perfect, okay, Mary had a little. Now, in the style of which classical composer, what would be funny, you think? Mary had a... Sousa. Well, Sousa's great, but Sousa's not really a classical. I mean, yeah, maybe, is it okay if I come back to there?
Rachmaninoff.
How about Rachmaninoff?
Okay.
This will work better for the piano. Yeah. Okay, Mary had a little lamb. And then maybe I'll do Sousa. I try to honor everybody's request. Okay. How does Mary, it's like, right? Something like, okay, so in the style of Rachmaninoff, right? I wasn't quite sure how to do that, but I tried. So now I'm going to play, tonight I'm playing a mix of, I've got some requests to mix classical and gospel, to do a little bit of both in the concert. Usually I only end with the gospel. So I'll start off with a gospel tune by Squire Parsons. He died not so long ago, back in May. Yeah, he wrote the famous Sweet Beulah Land. I think I've played it for you before, so I'll start with that for a gospel, to start off with. So it's a beautiful song. It's very meditative, and he wrote it when he was a high school teacher I think in the 70s or 70s, and he was driving to school very early every morning, and the music just came to him, and when he'd get to school, he would just write down the next part. That's how he wrote it. It's pretty interesting. West Virginia. And he said that seeing the landscape of West Virginia actually influenced this song. So it's one of those things that sounds much older than it is. It sounds like it's from the 1870s or the 1770s, but it's actually from the 1970s. So. now to some classical. We'll go back and forth, half and half, like the drink. So back to Europe now. I'm going to play something you've heard me do before. I can't do a whole brand new program each month. Maybe I could if I was a little quicker here, but I'll start off with Gluck Scambati, the melody from Orpheus and Eurydice. And this is an opera from 1762 that's based on the Orpheus myth. By the way, Gluck was from Vienna, and he sort of preceded Mozart, and he was a big influence on Mozart, especially in his opera compositions. And, you know, Mozart was what, 5 years old when this was written? He was writing music when he was 5, but, you know, he was still 5 years old. So the opera, you know, is based on the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. It's an ancient Greek myth. Eurydice dies, she goes to the underworld, and Orpheus can't accept it. And he goes to Hades, to the underworld, with his harp, and plays the harp for Hades, and finally Hades relents and says, you can take her home, but don't look back. You've heard that line before. And unfortunately, I guess it's human nature, they're almost to Earth, and he turns back and loses her forever. In the opera, though, because it's the Age of Enlightenment, the 18th century, they didn't want to end it like that, so they threw in a nice ending where Eurydice comes back, they have a big party, and everyone lives happily ever after. It's kind of nice. But that's the story. And I think about this a lot, because I think ancient myths, they can be heavily symbolic. If you've ever lost a loved one, well, you've been through this before. Maybe going to the underworld is like symbolic of dreaming of that person. I mean, I still have dreams of people, relatives that are gone, you know. And that feeling of that you can't accept that they're gone, I mean, I don't know, I just think of someone like Carl Jung would really, you know, have a field day with analyzing those things. But this excerpt from the opera, this melody, is from an instrumental and dance interlude called Dance of the Blessed Spirits. Flute and strings is the instrumentation. And so it's not actually sung, this part. And the arrangement is a 19th century arrangement by this wonderful Italian composer, Scambati. And I just love playing this piece. It's so beautiful. It sounds so simple and so pure, but actually in the hands it's like very gnarly to play, but it's that good combination. So here it is. There's a quote from an ancient Roman writer. Is it Seneca? Or somebody like that. I always mess up the name. Seneca, who said that if it's, and I'm completely paraphrasing, I'm not a literary, expert, but if it's human, then it's not foreign to me. Something like that. Was that Seneca who said that? I think somebody like that, or Horace or something. I have to look it up. But that line came to me now because I think that the story, even though it's so old, the ancient Greek myth, it's universal. If you've lost a loved one, you get it. And the music too. People get put off by classical music. They think, oh, it's so old and it's so distant and everything that I must not be able to connect to it. No, you can. It's human. So you're human and it's human. So you can find a way to relate to it. So the next piece I'm going to play, someone here said Paganini. I keep doing Paganini. And I've gotten to the end of Schumann's Paganini studies. This has been, for like the last half year, we've been suffering together. So not suffering, it's not the right word. Because the music is beautiful, but I say suffering because Schumann is a low risk to reward ratio composer, meaning that so tricky to play, so awkward. And it doesn't sound necessarily that awkward, and he's not flashy the way Liszt is flashy or the way Chopin is flashy, even Mozart. Schumann is hard to warm up to, but once you do, there's so much depth there that it's worth it. That's why I love Schumann, especially love Schumann. And in these Paganini studies, I think I told you last time, he did 12 of them. He arranged 12 of 24 Paganini solo violin caprices. Because Paganini was like the rock star of that time, and Schumann heard him in the 1830s, and he was so inspired that he took half of the Paganini caprices and adapted it for the piano. Liszt did his later. I played you the Liszt ones a couple years ago, or a year ago. But the funny thing is, I didn't know this, it's too late now, but the first set of 6, which I played for you in the spring, Schumann did not intend them for public performance. He thought of them as pedagogical pieces. He took the Paganini, the violin sheet music, and just added some chords and accompaniment, and that was that. That's what he said. I think it's more ornate than that, but that's what Schumann, said. But in the second set, and I'm playing the last 3 tonight, hopefully, he takes more liberty with it. He makes it his own. This is like a translator translating a poem. You can translate it word for word, and that can work, or you can make it, you can take liberties with it and put it more in your own voice. And I'm not saying one is better or worse, but in some ways it could be more interesting the second way, and that's what's going on in these pieces. So when I play these, I don't feel Paganini much at all. I feel Schumann. They're not played very much, and I kind of understand why, because they're also just like nightmarish to play sometimes, to learn at least. This one exemplifies something about Schumann. The character changes. Sudden character shifts. This is a big part of Robert Schumann's style. And I think it's for 2 reasons. One is he was a literary person. He wanted to be a novelist. He didn't end up doing that, but his favorite writers wrote with this sort of splice technique, like E.T.A. Hoffmann. There's one plot and then splice another plot, and it's fragmentary. And his music is like that. Some people criticize that, but I think that's part of what it is. And furthermore, I think Schumann, his own personal life affected how he wrote. He had bipolar disorder, and those rapid mood changes and extremes, I think that's connected, to that. And there's something people say, I've noticed, and I don't like it. People will say, oh, well, Schumann, he was crazy. He wasn't crazy. He had a condition. He was a good man. He was a good husband, a good father. Wagner was crazy. Okay? He was crazy. There's a difference. On the other hand, I will say my wife sometimes tells me that she doesn't like it when I play too much Schumann because she thinks it starts to rub off on me. Schumann's music is very heavy and intense. You'll hear it from the first 3 notes. You just go, okay, it's dark. It's German romanticism. So, and it's funny how he turns Paganini, who in many ways is a very sunny composer, bright, but he puts Paganini in his own voice, and he makes it Schumann. So here is the first of the three I'm going to play. This is the C minor maestoso. It's a little longer. It's 6 or 7 minutes. It's not easy listening. It's not easy playing. But there's so much soul there, I think. So now I'm going to play a gospel song that everyone knows in a version that I've never done it before. It's kind of new for me to do this. So Blessed Assurance, Fanny Crosby, but I'm going to play it in a different style. I've been studying some recordings, and this is a style that the chords is some jazzy chords. It's a style that's really from the African American church that they would play it like this. So it's kind of a new thing for me. I do new things for you because we meet often, so I try to keep it fresh. But then the problem with that is sometimes they're not fully cooked yet. So, but here is Blessed Assurance. Back to the Schumann, Paganini Schumann. The next two, I'll see how this one goes because these are really new for me. This is this challenge. I do these crazy challenges and then I regret it later, but it's too late to not learn it, unlearn it. So this next one is based on a caprice by Paganini that's almost like an exercise because it's relentless 16th notes. In other words, it's just da 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 like non-stop. It's and there's even almost like no place to breathe. Oh, there's one or two spots where there's a little, but it's like breathless. It's like somebody talking incessantly. And this reminds me of something my great grandmother had bipolar. And my dad was very close to her. She was wonderful. And he said that when she was in a manic phase, sometimes she would just talk very fast. not breathing almost, just da, 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 like, you know. And that's this piece, I think. It's quite beautiful, it's brilliant, but that's what it reminds me of. I don't know. And by the way, when I say that about incessant talking, it's not a bad thing, you know, to do. Sometimes I talk incessantly when I'm driving and my wife has to say, you know, focus on the road. I'm not allowed to talk about composers and violin and gospels. I can't talk about that in the car anymore as a rule. So there are a few moments when all right, here it is, the next one. It's similar to another piece of Paganini's, the La Campanella. Sorry, I haven't played it. I played it for you before. That same kind of. That's a violin thing. It's da, 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 da. It's a bow thing. So it works on the violin. The next one, I'm going to play now the last of the Schumann Paganini's. It's also the one I learned most recently, and I think it's the hardest in the middle. It's just a nightmare. So I'll do my best. But this starts and ends with a very elegy-like. It's beautiful and simple. Rich sound. And then in the middle, it's more of that incessant talking, you know. It almost sounds like Bach. And Schumann said that Bach should be your daily bread. So he meant it. He was very influenced by Bach. So, okay, I really need good prayers for this. it's new for me. It needs to cook more, it needs to marinate more, but it's, that thing is, the middle is like, it's a nightmare. Because Schumann he wanted to be a virtuoso pianist. He was not a child prodigy. And he threw himself into practicing, sort of like Liszt did at a certain point, but he damaged his hands. He got a machine or a device meant to strengthen the pinky finger, and he just ruined his muscles. I think he also probably practiced, like Liszt was more, maybe it's a temperament thing that when Liszt threw himself into his 10, 15 hour a day practice sessions, he was loose physically when he played. And when you play Liszt's music, it's interesting to think about how a composer played the piano. You can tell by the way they write. And so Liszt writes in a way that everything just fits like a glove, It fits well. Beethoven, not so much. Beethoven, it's very it feels like, it's not a comment about the quality of the music, it's just how it feels in the hands. And Schumann is like a nightmare because he writes it like, it doesn't make technical sense, and sometimes you just have to deal with it. There's stories about the Schumann Concerto, which is an amazing piece, the third movement of that. It's been a while. It's a famous piece for having disasters happen. Famous. There's like a few spots there where a shipwreck happens all the time. Even Emil Gilels, one of the greatest, there's a story that he was doing a radio broadcast of that piece, and he just at one point so it happens. Anyway, so now I'm going to play some gospel, again, a very different style. This is kind of in the style of the Three Cousins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, and Jimmy Swaggart, who died recently. I know Jimmy Swaggart was an interesting, he was. When I play in this style, I had an uncle who's no longer with us, but I had an uncle who would always comment. He would say, when you play that style, all I think you need to do is get a TV show, play that kind of music, and then cry for the camera. So, that's a Jimmy Swaggart reference. So, but this is, Life is Like a Mountain Railroad. I love the title. It's an old-time gospel tune. And I'm going to put a lot of that Louisiana, like Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, and Jimmy Swaggart in there. So, they like to do this. They like to do that, glissando, and they like to do some sort of that whatever that is. Yeah, so it's a style, so yeah. course of tonight, the Brahms Paganini Variations, Book 1. I haven't played those for you in a while. I've played a lot of Book 2 for you lately. There's 2 sets, you know. And I think Book 1, the last time I played it was probably back for you here. It was like in the early fall or something, October or September. So what's old is new and what's new is old. So I talked a lot about Schumann, and Brahms, as a young man, actually lived in the home of the Schumanns for a time. He was looking for some advice, and they sort of took him in, both Schumanns, Robert and Clara. And it was at this time that Robert Schumann, his mental and physical health deteriorated. He was institutionalized, and he died at the age of like 47 or something. It's horrible. And Clara was pregnant with their 7th child while this happened. And Brahms was there helping out with the family. And they took a trip to Switzerland shortly after that. Young Brahms, Clara much older, and the kids. And it was at this time I was reading about that people started speculating that there must be some sort of romantic thing going on between Brahms and Clara. And I really don't see how that could have been with all the difficulties of that moment. I just don't. It's been sensationalized. There's a 1940s Hollywood movie about this, and Katharine Hepburn plays Clara, and I don't know who plays Brahms and Schumann, but probably not. But what definitely was there was some sort of unrequited or unspoken feelings. Definitely Brahms towards Clara, and also maybe Clara towards Brahms. There was definitely something there. And I think that is an essential part of Brahms's style, is that there's something under the surface unsaid. That's what makes his music. It's the tension between a person who's formal on the outside and intensely passionate on the inside. And when I say formal, I mean, Brahms was very brainy in a way. He was obsessed with Renaissance music. He was obsessed with the craft of composition. He would spend hours on exercises, and you can feel in his music that there's a lot of, really good planning going on. I don't know about Schumann. Schumann is more of a Dionysian composer, and Brahms is very Apollo. But what's most fascinating to me with Brahms is that despite that, it's what's under the surface. And you'll hear it, there's a lot of fire and brimstone in this, but there's some quiet moments, and you can feel the sort of, like maybe that's his feelings for Clara. And for a 29-year-old, that sounds like a much older person. There's a lot more like reflection, even some little bit of regret or something in there. I don't know. And that's what Brahms is. But these variations, Brahms intended them to be just finger exercises. I've told you this story that when I learned it, one of the variations, variation 1 in the beginning, I was using this other fingering, which I won't do now because that's the version by playing it like this way. I had to go to the orthopedist. And that's never happened to me before. And then they said, what's causing you this pain? I said, Brahms, So, yeah. But Brahms, he wrote these as exercises, and then somewhere, like you can tell the first couple of variations, like, oh yeah, these are like exercises. But I think as he kept writing, he realized this music has a lot of character. So they're not going to be exercises, although they're still really, annoying to play physically. But they're beautiful. And it's the 24th Caprice that it's based on by Paganini. Which, like everyone knows, is famous. That's a famous theme. I played you Liszt's version of that, and even Lutoslawski last time. I'll do that again, maybe the really 12-tone one, remember? But this is Brahms, Book 1, Paganini Variations. I'm going to get some water. Where did I put it? Because this is also like a workout, so. We bought all this water for the snowstorm, because they said we would lose water and lose power. Luckily we didn't, but now we have all this water, so bottles of it. very short piece as a contrast before my last gospel song. I'm going to play Claude Debussy. Some people say never end with a soft piece. Well, I will. I mean, at least classical. This is Beau Soir, Beautiful Evening, which it is, even though it's cold. It's a song, and thankfully I don't sing and I'm not going to sing in French, so don't worry. And the reason I'm playing, there's a solo piano arrangement by Daniel Héricourt. I've told you about him. He was born in Paris in 1903, knew Debussy, knew Ravel, and he ended up living in Greensboro. Yeah, and he taught at UNCG. You see, he picked Greensboro over Paris. See what a good state we live in? And his widow, Jane, who herself's a great musician, pianist and everything. I'm friends with her. She lives in Greensboro. And she gave me a stack of her late husband's music. This was in there. And last time I played you one of his original compositions. So this is his arrangement of Debussy, Beau Soir. I don't even know if it's like published, which is very interesting. But yeah, so Beau Soir by Claude Debussy, arranged by Daniel Héricourt. And this is a somewhat early Debussy, so it's that impressionism, which is a word he didn't like for his music, Debussy, but it works, I think, because it's like a Monet painting or something. It's very different from Brahms. Also, the languages are different. The German language is very articulated, you know. Das ist nicht gut, ja? It's very like that. But French is, non, je ne sais pas. It's like you have a baguette in your mouth, you know. J'aime beaucoup jouer la musique de Debussy. You know, and the music is like that. The music talks differently from the Brahms. And I love this music very much. So Debussy's wonderful. So here is the piece. Last one. This is Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. Everyone knows it good. We have some really good voices here, so if you want to sing, that's one thing I absolutely cannot do is sing. When I was in school, I know that people tell me, no, you really can, and then when they force me to, in every case they'll say, actually, you're right, don't. When I was in school, in college, we had to sing in the choir. Pianists had to, because the string players, they put them in orchestra, and now all the singers I went to all music school. So the pianists, it's like they didn't know what to do for those credit hours. So they made us sing in the choir. And there were only a handful of us, me and a couple of friends who were also pianists, and we all sat in the back and sounded terrible. And one of my friends would sing. At one point we were doing exercises, vocal where, you see, I can't sing. And he was doing this like fake Pavarotti singing, my really good friend. And finally, some of the real singers, they got annoyed. And one of the teacher, the conductor, came over and said, you've got to stop doing that. And my friend, he started, it was, this was like we were in college, so he just started sort of like fake crying, and he said, I'm just trying my best. This is how I sound, Anyway, so I don't know why I told that. It has nothing to do with it. So here's Leaning on the Everlasting Arms in an up-tempo gospel style. Later. Have a good evening.
Sure.
Thanks. Grab that.
Well done. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Better than expected.